Welcome to Biz Dev Live. My name is Cameron Toth, and I am so excited to bring you the amazing Rich Bruno. In this world, you may be busy. You may have a lot of things going on. You may have a lot of challenges in your world, but it is always important to sharpen that saw. In the post for this show, you'll see talking about the woodcutter, and it's a great analogy, great explanation of why it's important to understand why sharpening your tool, which is you, is always important for that improvement, for getting further in this world. If you don't have time to sharpen your saw, you're basically cutting with a dull blade, which means you're not working smarter, you're just working harder. And that is what we want to do with this show, BizDev Live in general, but in this show in particular, we want to help you sharpen your saw and set up strategies so that you can keep those teeth nice and pointy, so the tools that you have are working to the best of your ability and the best ability of those products and services that you're working with. You can't do that if the saw isn't sharp. All right, so stay tuned. We'll be right back after the BizDev Live theme.
BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time, live. BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. BizDev Live, business development, not even selling it. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is business development, not even selling it. BizDev Live. BizDev Live. This is business development, not even selling it.
So I'm excited to introduce you to Rich Bruno. As a 30-year career supply chain leader and recent Johnson & Johnson retiree, Rich led numerous teams and divisions, always focusing on talent management and development. For the last 9 years, he's been fortunate enough to live out his entrepreneurial spirit and lead two of the largest Max Challenge franchise locations as a successful franchisee. In August 2019, Rich became a John Maxwell certified coach, speaker, and trainer. In January 2020, Rich was honored to be appointed to first vice president of the Old Bridge, Sayreville, and South Amboy Chamber of Commerce. The combination of his corporate experience coupled with building successful businesses and helping to improve the lives of others through his John Maxwell certification positions helps him to help others in many ways, including business consulting, franchise consulting, leadership development training, organization development and culture, personal and professional development seminars and workshops, organization, time management, productivity, one-on-one personal coaching. These supportive services are anchored in helping individuals and organizations to grow while building a solid foundation of a positive perspective to recognize potential. Over the years, Rich has worked with a diverse group of clients, helping them to take action and drive results in their businesses, develop strategies, improve mindset, while also improving organizational skills and time management, accountability, and leadership skills, as we were talking about, sharpening that saw. His philosophy is give more than you get, live a life of continuous improvement in all aspects of your life, and embrace challenges as opportunities, not problems. I got several signs around my office that say things to that kind of piece and sentiment. Thank you so much for being on the show with me, Rich. Appreciate you being here.
Well, Cameron, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be on the show. Thanks for everyone who's joining today. I'm really excited to engage with everyone and really tell a little more about my personal story and ways that I'm helping people today.
All right, beautiful. And tell us a little bit about how you're actually helping people right now, because I know that's something that we want to talk about. I know I read a lot about it in the bio, but just shortly, how you're helping individuals specifically.
Well, right now, as a consultant, I'm working with a variety of different groups and individuals, and it's all about personal professional development. So for me, I have an important role as a leader Leaders influence people. And what I try to do is not only continue to grow myself, but help others to grow. I'm really passionate about improving the lives of others, whether it's in a setting like the Max Challenge or a setting like a professional environment. So let me start with the professional first. I work with a variety of different clients, from small business owners, realtors, and individuals just trying to improve themselves personally. And the way that I do that is first to understand where their needs are. So everything I do is customized, right? I'll give you a couple of specific examples. With small business owners, many times they're struggling to scale their business. So how I'm helping them is using my experiences as an entrepreneur with the Max Challenge, also as my corporate trained experience as a supply chain professional, to help them to grow themselves and their business, right? So some specifics. I'll have a small business owner that says, you know what, I'm nose to the grindstone. I can't pick my head up and figure out how to scale my business. I'm not really an effective delegator. I don't know how to look at the right things to measure my business. I just need help. And this is a very common thing for small business owners that I've found over the last 3 years. So for small business owners, typically they're, experts at their craft, right? They may have grown up through a family business or just have an expertise in a certain area. But it's difficult for them to also have the leadership skills, the business building skills to really have an effective business. And so I help them and I coach them to look at the right things and change the ways that they lead and grow their business so that they can be more effective. Some examples might be.
And let me before we get into more of this, because I think we're going to create some feed for people in terms of your background, in terms of your experience, and why you're motivated to help people this way. I think that's helpful for people to understand. So I'm interested how little Rich, right? I can't imagine the 5-year-old you was like, yeah, I'm going to go out and help small business owners, right? And, be this kind of professional consultant guy that's this particular thing. I imagined there was another career track in mind that little Rich has. So talk to me a little bit about your youth growing up and kind of what shaped and formulated you and what motivates you then and what motivates you now.
Oh, absolutely. I appreciate that. So, when I grew up, and I think it's very common for many people as they're in their teenage years and, getting ready for advanced education, I didn't know what I wanted to do. In fact, I was on a track to go into accounting, and I took a college accounting course in high school and realized absolutely no way was I going to do that, right? And again, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was fortunate enough to be introduced by my parents to a mutual friend who was an engineer. And he told me all about engineering. And lo and behold, I ended up enrolling in college at Polytechnic University as a mechanical engineer. And that was really history. I mean, I was always very analytical and good in math and science, but I didn't really understand the nature of an engineering kind of curriculum and job. And so I pursued that. But let me just rewind a little bit before I get into college and my professional career. I'm going to say that the one thing you're going to probably hear a lot today is I am relationship driven. At its core, that's what I'm about. If you asked anyone about me that knows me well, they would say I am all about relationships. So, of course, the foundation, the influence of that is my family, my parents, my brother and sisters, right? So grew up one of 4. My parents were tremendous influences in my life, mostly from a value standpoint. Like what was important to me, friends and family. In fact, I will tell you, it's just a great example, right? 3 of my best friends to this day are friends that I met at 3rd grade. So 3rd grade, I'm talking like 40 plus years, different high schools, different colleges. We still stayed close to this day. It's also another example would be my friend Alex that I met at Maxwell House Coffee, my first job. I know this guy for over 30 years. He's like my brother. He's actually the godfather of my daughter, Sam. So at its core, I'm about relationships and family and friends, and it all comes from my parents and my upbringing. So if you know nothing else about me, and who I am, it's about relationships. To expand on kind of the growth trajectory for me as a young professional, I became a project engineer for Maxwell House Coffee. And I will tell you one thing, I think it should be inspiring to everyone here that doesn't have a clear path or is looking for something new. I think a really important thing about me is that I'm someone who I'm willing to bet on myself, and you're going to hear this through the entrepreneurial piece and the coaching. I'm someone who bets on myself. I believe there's always a solution, and I believe I'm always going to find a way. So I don't need to have necessarily a long-term roadmap. I just know that through every step of the way, there'll be many twists and turns that I can't predict. And that doesn't really rattle me. It doesn't bother me that there's uncertainty. I'm willing to live with the uncertainty, knowing that the outcome will be positive. So with regards to the rest of, continuing my career, I mean, I had a 30-year supply chain career across 3 companies, right? And I think you mentioned in my bio, in the intro, that I've always been focused on talent management and development. So for me, it's more about what I was doing was how I could help others and how I could build great teams. Again, it ties back to relationships, right? So over a course of 30 years, I've been in multiple divisions and groups in different companies. Last one being Johnson & Johnson, and what a great company. I've built such great relationships with people. And so, again, it comes back to the relationships, but it's about what you can do to impact the lives of others, I think. I think the best value you could bring is how you help others to grow and be better. And I try to live that in my life every day.
You had a long career. I mean, you talked about retiring from Johnson & Johnson. You started out one way and kind of moved towards another, not being interested in the finance and numbers piece to begin with, but you've sort of moved to that and sharpened that saw and obviously moved around that. I know that's been one of the greatest struggles for me. Being an entrepreneur is on the financial administration side, but having a long history, regardless wherever you are, you got to focus on things like tracking. So, can you talk to me a little bit about in your career? You've obviously had a little bit of success, with everything that you've done, and I know that your focus has been on relationships, and I respect that a lot because I think it all comes down to relationships. I'm having that conversation with my in-house staff every day, the emails, the phone calls, it all comes down to relationships and business models.
Yeah.
How are we tracking things? How are we knowing that, we're delivering on, our product in a way that feeds the bottom line? I mean, we see it all the time. You got a successful company, but the stock is going down. We see that a lot lately, right? In an environment, especially where, speculation is towards the negative, you got a lot of folks that aren't necessarily profitable. And we're starting to see that in their stock prices out in the world right now. And July of 2022, right? That's something going on. But within your career, obviously, you've been able to bump those numbers up, and you've been able to do that over years and years of a career. So talk to us a little bit about both the relationship success with the actual practical application within these job roles and responsibilities.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that question. So first and foremost, I will tell anyone, whether it's a small business owner, whether it's a realtor that's building their own business, again, leveraging the relationships, but always having a focus on the customer, right? Think like a customer, right? You don't have a customer, you don't have a business. So you could be a financial wizard, and it doesn't matter if you cannot focus on the customer needs and provide them with a product or service that differentiates you. What makes you special that they should want to engage in your service or your products, right? So again, the foundation is, forget the part about relationships, even though it's really important, it's a customer focus. And I got that throughout my supply chain career. It was always customer centric. Now about the numbers, I was really fortunate to be in some great training grounds in my career in corporate America. And it was so heavily focused on managing budgets, key performance indicators or KPIs, right? Just developing business acumen to know how you're measuring your business and know if you're doing well or not, right? So very important that you're grounded in what you're trying to measure and that you know what good versus bad is, right? So started with my corporate career as an entrepreneur in a small business, leading 3 Max Challenge franchise locations. I'm going to tell you this. First of all, let me take a little tangent. This book is fabulous. Many of you may have heard of it. Simon Sinek, Start With Why. It's all about being fueled by your passion, right? For me, I got to love what I'm doing or I'm not going to do it. Especially now as I get a little bit older, my perspective has changed and I'm very brutal about my time and how I use it, and that I have to love what I'm doing in my whole life, not just professionally. So back to the finances and the passion that fuels that, right? So the Max Challenge business, I will tell you, 10 years ago, I became a member of a great health and wellness program called the Max Challenge. And I saw what tremendous benefits it gave me mentally and physically, and my wife. We did the program together. And I just immediately felt like, man, this has so much potential to help other people. And I was craving that opportunity to help make a difference in other people's lives. So I just went into this business. And I'm going to tell you flat out, this goes back to the betting on yourself. And I encourage everyone to do this. Don't be afraid. If you believe in something strongly enough, go after it and work towards figuring it out. I had 0 prior business ownership experience, 0. And I went, asses and elbows, don't mind the expression, into this, fueled by my passion. I was very numbers oriented, very analytical. Certainly that helped me. But I got to tell you honestly, I didn't know how to run a business. I didn't know how to run a business. I figured it out as I went, grounded in customer focus, and then setting up an effective business model to drive a profitable business, so obviously you could stay in business. And I'm happy to say that despite COVID, which was literally a 2x4 across the head, it really was. I had 3 franchise locations while I worked at Johnson & Johnson. I got to tell you, looking back, I don't even know if I can tell you how I did that. I just did it because I wanted to do it. And so the business part of it will come. I will tell you, if you don't have the business acumen, find the people who do that can help you, because your business model will make or break you.
Yeah, let me tell you something that I don't want to say recently discovered, because people have been hitting me over the head with it for a long time on the mentorship and the coaching side of it. But as I've moved my office out of my home, it's really interesting the things that I think I have to do versus the things that I actually have to do versus what there is to do in the business. And I know that's throwing a lot of people right now that are listening to the show, but in terms of what you were just talking about, I think a lot of people are very, very, very intimidated by the idea, especially if they're working for a corporation or they have a full-time job, starting something else. And, they're already worried about time with family and where are you going to find all this time? What hours of the day you're working? How are you going to manage this? When do you going to fit this time in? And then you got people in your ear like, I love Gary Vaynerchuk, but I think sometimes there's some conflicting messages coming from there too, because he's once saying, be happy, enjoy it, have a positive attitude, and also work, grind, man. What is this weekend nonsense? And I don't want to criticize too much, because I think he's very much about taking his weekends, but he does work very long days. And so you have these kind of like uber entrepreneurs that sort of set these kind of very, very interesting dichotomies of what entrepreneurship looks like. And we can very often get into the comparison game. Well, if I'm going to do it and I got to do it like that, I don't know if I can do that. And I think it looks a little bit different for everybody. Can you talk to me a bit about what that looked like for you first when you were starting, and then going back to this, like running these 5 locations in addition to your Johnson & Johnson job.
Yeah. So we could probably spend the whole rest of the time talking about this. I mean, this is a huge topic, right? So I will definitely take you through my progression of being more efficient and effective and being brutally focused on time management. But I will tell you that this comes up time and again with so many people that I coach. Okay. I think most people in the world struggle with this, finding the time to do the things that they want to and have to do. So let me first say this, and I'm a huge believer in this. If it's important enough to you, you'll find the time to do it, right? So for me, the translation is I worked a very important job at Johnson & Johnson, okay? I didn't have a layup gig. I had a really important responsibility. I purposely decided to go into the Max Challenge as a franchisee. And in fact, I did that 6 months after I took on probably the hardest job I ever had at Johnson & Johnson, looking back on it now. I was raising with my wife 3 kids who were 8 and 5 years old when I started this Max Challenge journey. So I overlaid entrepreneurship with my professional career at J&J and lived a very robust family life. So you say, Rich, how did you do that? It's about making the time for the things that are important to you. Did I work really hard and long hours? Of course I did, right? But over time, what I have learned and what I teach a lot on now with time management workshops and working with small business owners and individuals is about how to prioritize your time. And at its core, it boils down to being brutally disciplined about what you're willing to put your time towards, right? Again, what's most important, you allocate time to. If someone wants your time, that doesn't add value for you and it takes away from the time with your children or advancing your business or just enjoying time peacefully to read, what have you, you don't let them take that time. I'm flat out honest with you. You make a choice. It's all about choices. If you let them take that time, you're willing to give up that time, right? So time management is all about prioritization and shifting priorities. This is a fabulous book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, okay? And the short story around this is Gary Keller is a co-founder of Keller Williams Realty, okay? It was a really interesting read. This guy was driven. He tried to outwork everybody till he got himself sick. And he realized, I'm going to either tap out or I got to find a different way. So my message to everyone is there's always a way, but you have to be open-minded to changing the way you do things. If you keep doing the same thing, you can't expect a different result. So if you're struggling with time management or fitting everything in, you got to rethink what you're doing. Take stock in what you're putting your times towards and really be honest with yourself about what you have to do. You mentioned this, Cameron, what you have to do and want to do and need to do. Like there could be a lot of competing priorities, right? So it's breaking it down to the most important things, being well organized, using your calendar and prioritizing your time.
Well, the killer thing, right, is when you find yourself doing something that you're paying somebody else to do, but it's in front of you and you know how to do it, so you're doing it. And it's just really interesting for me as I'm kind of, for lack of a word, folks, moving on up in the world, right? And I've done this, at different points in my life with you work on events, but when you're in a physical space and you're doing work on a physical event, so I come from the hospitality world, so you're putting an event together. Well, especially when you're all there and you're all working at the same time, it's very clear, right? Why am I doing X, Y, Z if there's 3 other people kind of pushing me out of the way to get it done, right? You're slowing the process down. But when you're working on office related things and emails and you're in separate locations and there's multiple people that are looking at the same email box, you really have to get into that headspace of what's my actual priority? What is my actual job function?
Yep.
Am I there to take care of this task, or am I there to make sure that there are more of these tasks to do so we can hire more people to do them? And that sounds silly, but it's exactly what it is. I know, in your role as a project and portfolio manager for Johnson & Johnson, your job, I would imagine, literally was to bring in more business for these projects, for these portfolios, so more people can be hired, so there's more to do, so the companies that you're working with are happier, right? And so you're really having to focus down on what actually drives the bottom line versus the nitty gritty. This person needs XYZ, and these are the 20 steps that need to be fulfilled. There's somebody else to manage that piece. You got 20 steps of your own to bring that next project piece into the puzzle, right?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about leadership and delegation, right? I do leadership training for groups, and I will tell you one of the Achilles heels of most leaders that I've come across is an inability, or I'll say sometimes unwillingness to delegate, right? So leaders are influencers. They're the ones that are supposed to see forward and put people in positions to be successful and remove barriers. They're not necessarily the doers, right? So in your role, Cameron, just using you as an example, what I challenge you with is in the hospitality world and the resourcing that you employ to help make these things happen. Your job is to make sure that you're working on the right things, right? Not doing things that other people could otherwise be assigned to do, right?
Absolutely.
Because then your bandwidth gets diminished. You can't really add the value you should be, right? So whether you look at it as project and portfolio management, running a small business, it doesn't matter. Leadership is about influencing and driving a result by helping other people enable that success. And so if you're not a good delegator, and there are a lot of reasons, and we could talk a little bit about them, and I'd encourage the audience to chime in on this, because I would imagine a lot of people are feeling victim to the same thing. If you're not delegating, it may be because you don't want to let go.
Yeah, I was going to say fear is probably the hardest thing to sort of get over. And sometimes the fear is rational. A lot of times it's irrational, the fears that we have about the stuff. And I know in addition to just the regular, like, I don't want to let go of something, I know a lot of times there are things that I don't necessarily want to do, love to do in the business. And so the preference is to put myself in the technician role and handle this versus doing some of these more higher priority, higher thinking things that I don't necessarily want to do pieces in my business.
Yeah. Well, John Maxwell has a great tool. It's called the 3 R's, and it's about the law of priorities in one of his books. And I use this specifically with a lot of the prioritization work within the leadership training, and then with other small business owners as well. And it boils down to, you taking stock in, and I think this would help you as well, Cameron. Think about the 3 R's. The R's are what's required of you, right? That only you can do. What's the greatest return for you? What's going to be the best return on the time you're investing for that investment, right? What's going to get you the greatest output? And what's the greatest reward for you? So it's required, return, and reward, right? The reward is what do you really love doing, right? So time and again, when we go through this exercise in the training, what seems to pop the most is when you look at people's list of what's required of them, it's a really long list. Time and again, when you pick that apart, they're not all required of that person. It's just that they're choosing to do that work, which time is finite. You don't get more of it. So if you spend more time on the required stuff, you're not spending time on other things that you'd be better serving others by doing, right? So you really have to be brutally honest about, what you're holding on to, because whether you distrust someone else doing it, or whether you just like doing it that way, or just you simply like doing it, just recognize that you're committing and making a choice to use your time against what's something you think is required that may not be required.
And I love that piece. And when we talk about sharpening the saw, right, which is really what today's show is about, continual improvement, being a list maker, being somebody that actually refines those lists to some degree, right? Based on these priorities, getting good at that kind of things.
Yeah.
These are the things that exponentialize your return. You talk about these 3 R's, right? And so what's required, what's the return, what's the reward? And you exponentially expand your rewards, your returns, right? when you do these continual improvement things, when you do these things that help build you up every day, and when we kind of let them fall by the wayside and we just get busy, we get, into it, like that woodcutter that is saying, I don't have time to take a break and sharpen my saw. I'm too busy, right? We understand then, it's easy to see it from the outside looking in, but a lot of times we are that woodcutter just sawing away with that dull saw, saying we just don't have time for the improvement piece.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about continuous improvement and maybe some effective strategies, right? So, first and foremost, I feel like I've been living this, over a long period of time. I'm someone who I do always want to improve myself, and I think I have to grow myself so I can help others, right? Especially in the field that I'm in now. But when it comes to continuous improvement, I think the most important thing is to be open minded and self aware and be willing to continue to learn from what you do, right? So, look, we all make mistakes, but it's more valuable to take away what you got from it and to change it going forward than it is to just be totally unaware of it. So, continuous improvement to me means, taking stock in what's going on and being willing to, be aware, but also be willing to change it, right? It all in the spirit of improvement. And I think, when I work with customers or clients, whether it's a realtor, whether it's a financial advisor, whether it's a team, whether it's a small business owner, that continuous improvement always comes to bear, right? So what are you doing today that's serving you? What's not serving you? What would you do differently? And then also very importantly, holding yourself accountable to making those changes, right? It could be journaling, it could be goal setting, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you're going to be a continuous improvement person or have that mindset, you have to be living in that all the time.
I love that. And I think it makes, at least for me, it makes me feel good when I know that I've made some of these pieces a part of my day. When I go out and I get that exercise in the morning, when I've written down my priority, my goal list for the day, when I know that I put in work towards those goals, towards my finish line. I talk about the finish line all the time on the show. Running the marathon, not knowing where your finish line is just not a way to live life, right? You want to know where your goals are. You want to know what you're doing right now to get where you want to go in 20 years from now, right? And so you don't do that without doing that gradual improvement, and it's tough, right? We got these situations, these examples every day. Somebody wants to run a marathon, running, 25 miles. And so if you don't run all the time, right? Or you don't run anywhere near 25 miles all the time, right? Can you go out the door tomorrow and run a 25-mile marathon? Maybe through sheer force of will, but man, you're probably going to be a wreck after that thing if you even make it through, right? And so getting yourself to the place where you can manage 5 locations, right? Getting yourself to the place where you can do these kinds of things. And it's really amazing because when you're able to implement things that we hear about all the time, know that we should be doing, but aren't necessarily doing. When we implement these things and we get consistent with them and we build these great, in the words of James Clear, these atomic habits, right? When we build these things up, suddenly we almost become superhuman, especially looking back on our past selves. I look at myself, 10 years ago, I'm like, that person, just couldn't handle what this person can handle now, right? And so the idea that you can make yourself superhuman through the use of these building good habits pieces, these sharpening saw pieces, right? I'm definitely better shape than I was years ago, right? So doing those things that build you up and get you to a place where you can lift more, do more, be more is an amazing piece for anybody that's on this journey to try to service more.
Yeah, let's talk about habits, routines, balance, all of that. I think it's really important. Many observations I've made throughout my own life. And we just talk a little bit about a marathon, just to piggyback on what you said. So I ran my first and only marathon at age 52. I hate running. I'll just tell you that. I don't like it. I think the main point of all of this is that I had a purpose behind it. I did it for a charity that I was very, much wanting to contribute to, right? So the Jar a fantastic organization, Duchenne muscular dystrophy. A good friend of mine, his son is stricken with it, and I did this as a charity to raise money, and that was my motivation. So I think the main point I would say to everyone here is like, if you want to go do something, you have to be intentional about it, right? So no one wakes up and says, "Yeah, I'm going to run 26.2 miles tomorrow." It just doesn't happen. It doesn't. It's a purposeful plan over time. You got to take the steps one step at a time and get the small victories. The first week you're not running as much. The second week you run a little bit more. You follow, a certain protocol to build you up to the 26 miles. But all along in your mind, you're thinking why you want to do this. Like, it's very, very important. If you're not driven to do it, chances are you're not going to do it. It has to be important enough to you. So let's use physical exercise as an example. And what you said, Cameron, about, hey, I feel better than I did in the past. I'm establishing routine. I'm making sure I make time for myself for physical exercise. Let me tell you something. The physical exercise is probably more mentally stimulating than it is physically beneficial, right? So
no, absolutely agree. The positivity that it brings into my mindset and my day, it's invaluable. Absolutely.
Clarity, productivity, all of that. Sustained energy, right? I do seminars on this about total mind and body wellness, right? And it's really about serving yourself so that you're in the best position to serve your purpose or others, right? So, that physical part, the right, eating the right foods, and making that part of your routine on a regular basis is extremely important for the reasons we just said: clarity, productivity, right? Sustained energy. And you know what? The other thing is, you realize you're doing something for yourself. So earlier on, you said something about just going, working really hard, long hours. I'll tell you, like, making sure that you shift priorities is extremely important, right? And actually, Gary Keller talks about that in that book, Just One Thing, right? It's not about balance. He dispels that as a myth. There's no such thing as balance. It's about shifting your priorities. Right now, it's most important for me to go to my kid's soccer game. Later on, it's important for me to finish my work. Tomorrow morning, it's most important for me to get my workout in, right? So just shifting priorities, but all in the spirit of, satisfying your whole self. That's super important, because guess what? We're not robots, right? We are not going to be just drive. You know what? That's spiraling down a recipe for absolute disaster. So you need those productivity breaks, even while you're working. I talk to people about this all the time. Don't think you're just going to work a 14-hour day. Every 90 minutes, get up and walk around, especially if you're working remotely, right? So, driving that energy, that source of energy throughout your day is very, very important.
Yeah, I talk to people. I have staff in the office, and they're amazing people. They're awesome. And, I'll see them sitting down with their lunch in front of the computer, and I'm like, even though I'm paying them for their time, I'm literally, they don't clock out for lunch, right? They're on the clock while they're eating lunch. I'm like, go take a break. Go get out of the office, get some sunshine, or at least step away from the computer. Take a true, real break and eat and enjoy. Because first of all, I understand this from a management point. You're less productive if you're doing two things at the same time, period, right? So there's that. And I think that's incredibly important for everybody to understand. I'm sure you can talk about this idea too, one thing, one priority at a time. You're not serving anybody if you're showing up to the little league game for your kids and you got your head down, focused on the emails the whole time, right? You're not, obviously it's great that your presence is there and you're going to get the kudos and appreciation for that, but were you really there? Were you really present? Are you going to be able to talk about things? Are you going to be able to coach? Are you going to be able to guide? Are you going to just enjoy it for yourself? Was it a true mental break for you in your day, right? So I think these things are incredibly important for the longevity of your own mind, as well as your family and the people that you work with, right? Are you creating just some space and some time, some blank spaces? If you read a document and it's just covered in letters and there's no white space, it's not going to be a fun document to read. And I think sometimes our lives are like that, right? We just don't leave any room for the white space.
Well, I think that's a really great point. I'd love to spend some time on this, and hopefully this has, really resonates with a lot of people in the audience. So first of all, having that 100% engagement is really important, right? I'm going to give you a little quick story that hit me right between the eyes, and it was from my kids teaching me a lesson, right? So it was when I started the Max Challenge. I was working for J&J, very early stages of that. I would walk in the door at night and I'd have my phone in my hand. Now, twin 8-year-olds and a 5-year-old, you walk in the door, they're waiting for you, right? My phone's in my hand. I might even be on a phone call from a conference call coming back from work, driving home, right? They said to me, Daddy, put your phone down. And that was like a kick in the teeth, because it was like, holy smokes. They see that I'm not really here. I'm not present. So that was a great lesson for me, to be 100% present. And I'm a big believer in that. And that was kind of like the catalyst for me. But I think it's so important to be 100% present, because you don't want to miss anything, right? So when you go to that game, go knowing full well you made a choice to go to that game. It's adding value to your child, and just enjoy it. Whatever's got to be done will wait. It's not going away. Your job is to be finding the most effective way to get that other stuff done. Not multitasking. In fact, in that book, Just One Thing, Gary Keller talks about multitasking. And again, that's another myth. Multitasking is more of a chance to screw more things up at the same time, right? So it just shows the power of concentrating on one thing, right? I just want to go back to something with this book here. I pulled out a few books that really have been influential.
Get your mind right. Who's that by?
Yeah, this is by Todd Durkin. So
okay.
I read this a while ago. I can't recite it all the way back to you, but I will tell you that this guy is a professional trainer. He trains professional athletes, Drew Brees and others. When he was, an NFL quarterback, he owns a very successful gym, but he's got a great mindset. And this guy talks about getting your mind right, and it's about establishing those routines, eating right, making time for physical exercise, and having that quiet space. There's literally a routine he goes through where the first 90 minutes of a day is all about him. He's reading, he's journaling, he might be meditating, he might be doing some form of exercise, but that gets him on a path to have the most productive day. He also talks about really being focused on goals. And one of the things I took away from him, I think he called it like the big three, maybe. It might have been something like that, where what are the three biggest, most important things to do in a given day? I decided to kind of steal that a little bit, and I call it the focused 5. What I do is I pick 5 things at the beginning of every week that I feel are the most important things for me to do. It could be anything from professional to personal, my kids, my family, whatever it is. 5 things without fail every Monday morning. That's how I start my week. What are the 5 most important things that I want to do this week? And you know what? Because I'm a really driven person, I'll be honest, a lot of times there are 8 or 9 things on that list. But what I do is I cap it at 5. And I put kind of on the radar the other 3 or 4. If I get to them, bonus. If I don't, so what? Sometimes I get the 5 things done. Sometimes I don't. But what I do is I'm very grounded and focused on those 5 things, and they go in my calendar. So when you think about how you're using your time, geez, I have so much to do. How am I going to get it done? If you put it on your calendar and you're focused on doing it, that's a measure of accountability. You see it on your calendar. Who here doesn't use their phone? Everybody. Who doesn't have a calendar? Everybody, right? Everyone has a calendar. So using that as a really effective tool in terms of keeping you focused and definitely keeping you accountable is a really, if I can give you a tip, that's it. I mean, managing your time ties back to all of this.
I love that. And I think one of the keys for folks that struggle with the calendar thing is making sure that your calendar matters. I know for me, I have some different things going on my calendar. And so a big struggle for me is if you got too much on your calendar, then you got nothing on your calendar, right? And so you have to, if you're ignoring your calendar because you got all these different reminders, you got stuff that doesn't pertain to you specifically, on the calendar, which in my case, because I run a business, and so a lot of the stuff that's on the calendar has to do with staff and employees and all that stuff where, it's set up, and really I have very little involvement in it, but it's still on my calendar so that I can jump in at any moment, because I'm, coming from that place of control freak, and I don't want to let anything go. Right. And so as I move away from that, it's getting to a place where my own calendar is a little bit different from that, and I have a way of managing it and seeing it in a different way where I can truly focus and prioritize on those things that are important to me, and so that I'm not missing calendar items. Steve Spiro, who was checking in at the beginning of this show, right? I've missed some check-ins with him. We got weekly things, and I'm like in the middle of my business, and I'm missing appointments with him because I'm not even looking at my calendar, because he's changing the thing around. He's the master connector. He's got a lot of things. I'm like, he changes the thing. I'm like, yes. And then I'm totally, I'm not even looking back at the calendar at it. And so in order to prioritize those things like you're saying, right, and make sure you're making time for things that matter, because I've also been through the whole thing of, all right, I'm going to put this time block on my calendar. But if you sit there and you ignore the time block, well, obviously that isn't doing you any good, right? And so getting yourself to a place where you respect the commitments that you make to yourself is such a huge thing. And it's been a topic on so many of the shows that I've done, being accountable to yourself and creating methodologies that make you accountable to yourself, whether it's waking up early in the morning, whether it's staying true to your to-do list, to your focus 5, making sure that you are accountable to somebody, which hopefully that somebody is yourself, most importantly of all.
I think a few things pop to mind when you mention all of this. First of all, you're best, you're serving everyone else better when you take care of yourself first, right? Whatever aspect of your life. When it comes to the priorities and the calendar and being like super busy, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority, right? So that requires that you're really focused on, of course, how you're using your time, but being nimble. You have to be adaptable, right? You have to accept that not everything might get done, and you just have to prioritize. Okay, if a certain item on your calendar at 1 o'clock has to slip because a crisis, came up, all right, so then you have to make a decision at the end of the day. What are you doing with that 1 o'clock activity, right? Is it moving to another day? Can someone else do it for you? Was it really that important at all? Oh, I do it 3 times a week, so I'll just get back to it on Wednesday or Thursday. Like, you have to be in the moment enough to say, all right, I'm shifting gears, right? And I think really successful people embrace that idea, right? They find a way. They're problem solvers. They understand how to make choices. The best leaders know they cannot do everything. They just cannot. So the quicker you realize that, the better off you're going to be. And the other tip I'll tell you about your calendar, don't fill it up completely. I tell everybody this, do not build in more than 75% of the day's activities into your calendar. You need to leave buffer.
I agree. I'm listening to The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet. What's his last name? Chet. I'm going to mess it up, but really, really great book. The Ultimate Sales Machine, if anybody wants to look it up. Really great book, as was referred to by me by a couple of people. But the idea that you're creating time in your calendar that you can follow up on appointments, that you have some, somebody needs to jump in, whether it's a child, whether it's a adult, whether it's a coworker that needs a minute of your time, that you have some of those spaces in your day so that you can deal with it. It's gonna pop up anyways, right? So It's just a matter of making sure that you have some of that white space built in for that, some white space just for you. I know for yesterday. At a certain point, I was just like, all right, I need a break. I need to get up. I need to clear my head. So having some moments in your day that you can actually do that. I know I've had those days where I've just packed on the interviews and the meetings with staff and potential staff, one after another. And it is a beast. At the end of the day, you just feel so wiped. And so if you're able to build in a little bit of time where you're able to refresh yourself and exercise during the day, it can really make those days a lot more fun and manageable, so that you can build out those productive days in such a way that you can maximize your success. Because I know, you can go through a day like that and I never want to do that again, right? But if it was a productive day, if you got stuff done, Well, that's the idea, right? So how do we do it in a way that's fun and manageable?
Yeah, I think tying back to continuous improvement, right? I think it's really important, and I practice this regularly. You got to move on, right? So, what could I do better? What did I learn from this? I think I mentioned this earlier. Like, what do you learn from something, and what would you do differently, right? So, whether it's in managing your calendar or things that you think are important, or what time you invest in different things, or maybe that brutal drill of, hour to hour, meeting after meeting. Guess what? Your productivity is going to wane over time. You're not going to be as good at 3 in the afternoon as you were at 9 o'clock in the morning. It's just not going to happen, right? So I think it's very, very important to, be in the moment and realize these things, but always in the spirit of, okay, what did I take away from this? What might I do differently? And being open to trying different things, right? Getting stuck in the same old is not growing. And I'll tell you one other thing that we really didn't touch on that I think is super important. Gosh, I've seen this time and again in my entire professional career. The best leaders truly value people and recognize not what they can do for them, right? It's not about that. It's about the relationships with them. It's about empathy. It's about helping them to be successful. You're only as good as the people that you're surrounded by, right? This happened to me time and again throughout J&J. I was blessed to be part of such great teams, and I really appreciated that. And I knew my role as the leader working with those people. With the Max Challenge, I'll tell you what, Old Bridge is a tremendously successful location because we got knockout staff members, and we have had for 9 years. And the support of my wife has been unbelievable, right? So if I didn't realize that I needed her to do this and that she was willing to do this with me, what good would it be, really? Like, I would not nearly be as successful. So great leaders realize you cannot do this alone, and it's not about you. It's about everyone else.
Love that. And I think one of the things that I enjoy most about talking with you, Rich, is that you really do care about improving others. I talk to a lot of people, as you can imagine. And so sometimes, the focus is not there, or maybe they don't want to show that side of themselves, but you truly care about helping other people in their lives. Talk to me a little bit about this takeaway here. You talk very much about, your greatest reward is in helping improve the lives of others. So talk to us a little bit about that.
There are so many examples. I'll give you a few. I mean, I worked with a really great friend and realtor who was starting out in this business, and he really needed maybe some structure, organization, commitment, right? The accountability. And he came to me asking for that flat out, right? So, we developed a plan. We worked together for a long time, and this guy's knocking it out of the park. I think a lot of that is because, we worked collaboratively, but he got to a point where he believed in himself. And I think that I helped him to do that, right? So that's the part of leaders influencing others, right? Helping him to realize what he might be doing that wasn't serving him. And why would he keep doing that, right? So what could he do differently, and holding him accountable, right? With small business owners, same thing, right? I've had people come to me and say, gosh, I want to scale my business. I don't know how to do it. And I'll tell you what, the common threads are not well organized, not focused, not purposeful with their time, not good delegators, poor business acumen, all of those things, and helping them to, see the light and see that there's a way out and a solution. So I think at the end of the day, loving helping others, I mean, that really, really motivates me. But it's about showing people the possibilities, I think, and helping them to see that there are solutions. Like I tell people, there's always a way. Regardless of how adverse a situation, there's never no way out. There's always a way out. You just got to find it. And you got to believe that you could find your way out.
I love that. And I think one of the things that's the most interesting and rewarding moment for me in somebody's, when I'm talking to somebody and working with somebody, is getting to some sort of a breakthrough moment with them where they sort of say, oh yeah, they get that aha moment where it's like, wow, this is a better way to do it. Or yes, I understand why I need to make this kind of change in my approach or the way I'm doing things. I've talked, worked the last 26 years doing college and career prep, and I'm very passionate about that because of my own educational journey.
Yeah.
And so talking to students about how to best create those great relationships with those teachers. And I find it so interesting when we're having these conversations, because as I'm talking to my children and their friends, the things that we harp on, the things that we talk about, when we're talking about improving business owners and entrepreneurs' life, these are the key essentials that basically are the way for anybody forward. And so if you're a student and you want to do better in your classes, a great place to start is a better relationship with your teachers, right? If you're a young person and you want to get better and more successful financially, start saving money and finding ways to bring in multiple revenue streams, right? And understanding how you use your money and tracking and understanding what your goals are so that you have some sort of intention around what you're doing to begin with, right? And so these fundamental pieces of continual improvement, if you start them when you're really young. I love Warren Buffett's sort of piece on this. He's like, I don't know how much more successful I am than any other person, but one of the things that I had going for me is that I started a lot earlier than other people. So I don't care what age you are today. And Gary Vaynerchuk, sort of shares this message. This is one of those messages that I love. I don't care if you're 15 or you're 25 or you're 35 or you're 45 or you're 85. And I've talked to some folks that are retired and, they sort of see themselves in the last semblances of their professional life. And I'm sitting there, well, if it's already game over, right? Like, why are we having this conversation, right? And, I feel like if I got one day in me, if I got 1 hour, that's a chance to make a difference. And so I see it, wherever you are, whatever stage you are in your life right now, if you got a place you want to go, if you have a goal in mind, something that you'd like to do, well, now's the time to start making sure you're moving towards that goal. And it starts with, whether it's your Focus 5 or what do you call it? A visual map.
Vision board.
Yeah, vision board, right? Whatever it is that you got to put out in front of you so you can start walking towards that goal. It's a big deal. And if you're a young person and you got that vision goal and you're starting early, more power to you, because chances are long game wins, right?
Yeah.
And so that continual improvement over time, whether we're talking about financial returns, right? Or we're talking about actual abilities and skills, your time, right? Time times your effort and the work that you're putting in, man, exponential rewards. I think that's a big deal. Talk to me where we're closing things out here, but you have a great deal of experience from both your corporate professional life, your entrepreneurial life, and your coaching, actually getting educated as a coach and now coaching people. And you call this your three-legged stool. You have the experience to help other folks. Talk to us why, when we're working with vendors, we're working with people, why experience is such an essential piece.
Well, look, there's nothing else that can replace that, right? So with me specifically, and as it relates to, coaching, whether it's small business owners or individuals, the different teachings and learnings and experience that I've had across those three spectrums that you just mentioned, the corporate experience, the entrepreneurial small business ownership, and coaching others is something that other people don't have, right? So the reason that they would want to engage you is because you bring something that they don't have. You're helping them to solve a problem. So I feel that being a talent leader for 30 years and being in multiple supply chain disciplines, learning how to manage budgets and really being driven by business acumen, right? Being organized around projects, all those kinds of things add value to many other people in different ways. The small business ownership, maybe a lot of it is about overcoming adversity, right? And finding a solution that maybe you hadn't been given a recipe to solve for, right? And helping them understand what you did to overcome that adversity. When COVID hit, a perfect example in the health and wellness field, I mean, in New Jersey, gyms were shut down. like literally shut down for 6 months. So what I learned was how to pivot, immediately make quick decisions, bring a service to our members without a hiccup, and find different ways to financially manage the businesses. Like, those are incredibly valuable pieces of information and tools that others can benefit from. The coaching part, whether it's time management workshops, leadership trainings and groups, whether it's scaling a business, whether it's the operations infrastructure of a company, learning who to hire where, what the organization should look like, how to write a job description, how to write job manuals. I've done all of that. And there's great value in it. So that experience is worth quite a bit to people that don't have those specific tools or skill sets. Yeah. And I just absolutely love doing it.
When you're talking to a vendor, for me, getting somebody that's been there, done that, right, that has the experience. I think so many people, and people are going to go after like cheap products and services for certain, but so often there's people out there charging a lot of money for a whole lot of, I don't want to say nothing, but if the experience isn't relevant to what you're doing and where you've been, I think this is one of those things that you learn, as you go out and you pay for services, as you work with vendors, as you hire staff. I know one of the big things for me in bringing people into my organization is, while you take people that don't necessarily have the experience, you're often unique, in what you do, but the experiences that they've had behind them, they led to something. They led to some sort of expertise, some kind of knowledge, some kind of skill set adaptation. I hire for definitely attitude over aptitude. Yeah. But as you bring somebody in, do they have that attitude that's going to be beneficial to you around the things that you actually do in your business, right? And whether that's a vendor or employee, getting somebody that understands that cultural attitude that you need for your organization is a big, big, big deal. And so my experience, over the last 11 years of running Toth event staffing, I can tell you, my ability to hire somebody has grown exponentially. I got really good at hiring waiters and bartenders, but when it came to hiring like admins in the office, it was very difficult for me because it wasn't something that I built a system and process around, and getting out of my own head and understanding, all right, I got to take this stuff that's in here and put it out over there and have somebody else do it. Getting really comfortable with that was a big challenge. And so if you got somebody that can work with you, that has the experience in doing those kinds of things, it's a huge speed ramp. I think in Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill talks about there's a few different ways you can bring knowledge into your organization, and you can go out and you learn it. You can spend the money to, go, you can do an intern kind of thing, work for free, or you can purchase that knowledge, right? He talks about Henry Ford being able to push a button and bring in whatever expert he needs in the book, which is a funny example, but the idea is really important. And so you can speed ramp to success by reaching out, and hopefully people are speed ramping to success from watching BizDev Live and enjoying this show. I want to shout out Yolanda. She was saying earlier, this is resonating with me. So thank you so much, Yolanda, for watching this show. And thanks for everybody that was watching. Hopefully we'll get into the comments and not just watch, but also get in here and ask questions and take advantage of Rich and myself. We appreciate you. Rich, how can people reach out to you? I put your LinkedIn link below. I know you're big on Facebook as well, so I'll throw that link in there, but please let people know how they can reach out to you and who should reach out to you.
Yeah, look, at Rich Bruno Consulting, you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. Rich Bruno, R Bruno 420 is going to be my handle for LinkedIn. And who can benefit, or what people would be most, valuing kind of what I might have to offer. Look, it's personal and professional development. Anywhere from an individual that wants to grow themselves. More of the work that I'm doing is with, groups that are managers that want to be better leaders, small business owners in particular, where a lot of what we discussed today resonates for them, and it's value that I can bring to them. I think, in closing, one of the points I really want to make that I think is super important is that whole perspective of, positivity and taking action, right? So don't let roadblocks hold you back. Don't let them be reasons for you not to do something. You have a dream, go after it. Believe that you can do it. There's always a way. Whether you have to get help to do it or you can do it on your own, there's always a way. And I feel like that's one of the biggest life lessons I've learned. You know, I retired at 55. I mean, from J&J, but I knew I wasn't retired. I was just shifting gears. It was 2 weeks after I turned 55. And my reason for that was I wanted to make sure I didn't miss those really important years with my kids. And I wanted to be involved in everything, but I also wanted to be inspired to grow myself and do other things that would bring me value. Right. So if I leave you with anything is go after whatever it is you want to do. Anything is possible. Be willing to put the work and the effort in, but you can do it if you want it that bad.
I love that message. I love it a lot. Thank you, Rich, for doing this with me. I appreciate you. Please get in touch with Rich. This show is all about connection, getting in touch with the ideas, the inspiration, the motivation, and the people that can help you get on your way. Rich, you're awesome. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll be in touch with you. I know we'll have some stuff to talk about. I'm looking forward to the future with you as well. Everybody, have an amazing week, and I'll see you next week on BizDev Live.
Thanks.
BizDev Live, BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time, live. BizDev Live, BizDev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration, BizDev Live, BizDev Live, business development, not even selling it. BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T, BizD with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is business development, not even selling it. BizDev Live, BizDev Live.